Hello, welcome back to the Your Everyday Strength podcast. My name is Josh Sternberg, and today we have a very special guest with us. I'm pretty sure I say that every time we have a guest. They are all very special, some more special than others. Today we have Dr. David Sinclair.
What is going on, guys? Glad to be here.
So I'm going to let Dave give you a bit of an intro into himself, who he is, what he does, and you'll figure out soon why we have him on today's episode. If you have ever watched this on YouTube or anything like that, then you'll realize that we're in a different setting again today, which is great. It's good when we can actually have somebody come face to face. Little bit of a different situation to last time with Jimmy, just due to the fact that I currently have a construction zone on my back patio, thanks to whatever they're building behind my house that just clangs and bangs all fucking day. So thank you very much for that, Gold Coast City Council. And beyond that and my grievances with the local council, I'll let Dave take it away.
All right, so yeah, my name is Dave, as Josh said. I work as an osteopath and I work as a coach. So I basically started doing PT a bit over a decade ago. So started working when I was in the army, so doing combat training, basically taking people through obstacle courses and that kind of thing. And then I transitioned into my Cert 3 and 4, which is just a thrilling certification. And after that, I went into a bit of a different direction. I started doing some training, but then went into owning my own business for a little bit. After that, because at that time I wasn't really my thing. And then as I got further into owning my own business, getting experience doing that, I started helping just some friends in the gym with some really easy sort of issues like shoulder pain, knee pain, and just giving them some real basic sort of pressing or squatting, lunging form technique tips, which helped them with their pain. And then eventually I was like, I'm actually pretty good at this. And then looked into physio, and then I met an osteopath in the Gold Coast who told me about osteopathy. And then I started studying that. And then now I basically blend the two together, which I think is probably the best way to approach things, in my opinion, anyway.
So that's a very, very brief overview, because Dave's a very modest man. He's done quite a lot in his time. And he said over a decade ago, he started PTing, which if you're playing along at home, that makes him very old or very young.
Yeah.
Anyways, for those who don't know, what is the actual difference between osteopathy and physio or ex-phys? Because I know myself, when you told me you were studying, and I was like, the fuck is that? Like, what do they even do that's different to a physio? And then what's the difference from an ex-phys and things like that? So give people a bit of an insight into that.
I think I didn't really know what osteo was coming into the degree, but I got told that it was, very similar to, I guess you could say, physio in the terms of massage techniques. Less so exercise based. I find that physios are more they'll give you a lot of stretches and they'll go through exercises with you in the session, more so than traditional osteopaths. Osteopaths are very hands-on, very we'll spend, 40 minutes of the 45-minute session basically doing hands-on, and then I might give you one or two things at the end. Whereas I find physio is more so diagnosis, maybe some 5 or 10 minute treatment, needling, and then taking you through stretches and exercises, traditionally anyway. So I guess my point is that with osteo, seen as more hands-on, physio seen as more hands-off. However, it more matters of who you see and what their background is. So for instance, for myself, I train myself, I've done sports. So it makes sense that someone who's into training and doing sports would come see someone with a similar background. So it doesn't actually matter what I am per se, osteo, physio, chiro. It more so matters that Dave is someone that trains. He understands some part of the sport I'm doing. He can help me transition back into that because he has that understanding as well. And then he blends how he treats or how he assesses or how he gives me exercises is going to be catered towards that direction. As you know, finding someone who's in your discipline, like powerlifting osteo, powerlifting physio, you're more likely to send your powerlifting clients to that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've sent clients now to Dave for many years. I've been seeing Dave myself for many years now, very, very long time. And I think one of the biggest things for me as well is I know that I always put the difference down to you were allowed to crack necks and physios weren't, because that was my favorite thing. I'd just come in, get my neck and everything adjusted, and I'd be like, this is great. I love this. But you kind of nailed it in the sense that when people are looking for osteo, physio, anything like that, you kind of want to find somebody who essentially specializes in that, right? You're not going to go to, even in my realm, you're not going to come to me as a predominantly powerlifting strength coach and be like, oh yeah, I want to do, I don't know, swimming.
Yeah.
It's yep, cool. I could probably provide a pretty decent basis of strength training and things like that for a swimmer.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be able to specialize in stroke rate and all this other shit that you need to actually focus on, right? Yeah. Whereas coming to somebody who actually trains from a physical therapy background. And I know that there's a lot more of that nowadays, which is actually fucking great, because the age-old thing used to be you'd go to a physio, you'd go to an osteo, you'd go to anything like that, and they'd be like, no more training, you're done.
Yeah.
Straight away. So give us a little bit of insight into your, I guess, one, desire to actually do osteopathy and what pushed you more towards that. And two, your thoughts and feelings around that aspect of like, people go and see someone and they're just essentially told to just stop, not do anything at all.
Yeah. And you and I both know that's the worst thing that someone can do when they have pain or even an injury. The worst thing you can do is just do nothing. Like, there's so much you can do. If you have an upper limb injury, you can do lower limb training. If you have a lower limb injury, you can do upper limb training, so on and so forth. And keeping active is going to be important. Going back to your question, so like, why osteo? So I actually got through my degree and I quickly realized that, osteo is very hands-on. They focus very little on exercise. And I was like, man, have I made the right sort of decision here, essentially? And then I realized that, what we just said, it doesn't matter what you do or your discipline. People don't see me because I'm an osteo. Most people just think I'm a physio, really. They just say, it's got a physio appointment. I'm like, I'm not even going to, bother correcting you, because it's like, does it really matter?
I got a doctor in front of my name. Thank you very much.
I'm affected. But it's quite interesting, because now I look at it and I don't even think about being an osteo. I just think about, like, I'm passionate about what I do, and I help the clients that I do who don't care what I am or who I am or my discipline or whatever. The doctor, they don't really care about that. It's like, can this person get me back to training? Can this person get me back to sport? Or if it's just like a hobby, they have more trust in that, as opposed to, seeing Dave because he's an osteo. What was the second part of your question?
A thought process around
Rest.
People coming in and essentially just being told not to do it by physical therapists.
Yeah, that's essentially what I just said. So it's really good as a coach. And even for myself, I send my clients to people, if they're not on the Gold Coast, I send them to someone that I know through social media or through online, that I know understands the training aspect and understands, like, people don't need to just rest in majority of cases, unless it's quite, significant motor vehicle accident injury. Then maybe we need time to heal and recover. But in most cases with people with pain, the worst thing you can do is rest. And that's why as a coach, finding good physios or good osteos to work with and network with is going to only help your business and your coaching, basically your results for your clients.
Yeah, and exactly that. There's 2 points from there that I want to really highlight, and one of which is something I've mentioned before on this podcast is people don't come to me because of what I know. They don't give a fuck about the fact I've gone to uni or any of the tens of thousands of dollars I've spent on courses, etc. All they give a fuck about is if I can actually help them. And similar to yourself, it's like, people aren't coming to you because you've got a fancy letters in front of your name or anything like that. It's like, does this person know how to help me? Can they do it in a timely manner that's going to get me back to doing what I want to do as quickly as possible, as safely as possible? And that's it, really. Like, at the end of the day, that's fucking it. That ticks the boxes. That'll get them in, get them done what they need to get done, and move on from there. And then within that as well, we're essentially, like, having that network has been something that's been so incredibly important for me since I very first started as a PT. Years and years ago, I've sort of had a pretty good network the whole time of osteos, physios, even EPs, dietitians, etc., who are just like, okay, this person is past my scope of practice of what I can actually help them with. Let's go refer them on. And I know, and you'll know this as well, it can be very hard sometimes as a coach or as a clinician or anything like that. At the start, you have that, like, a little bit of scarcity, lack mindset. You do get worried about, if I refer my client to this person, they're going to be like, why do I need him if I can go to this person? And I'm sure you've dealt with the same from the clinician side of things and whatnot as well. But give us your thoughts around that, and anybody who might be either a physical therapist in the industry or a PT or anything like that. I've spoken about it, but I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Are you talking more so the ego sort of
ego?
thing,
I think it's less ego. I think it's more just like scarcity around, like, oh no, this person's going to leave, so then I'm going to lose a client. It's not so much the ego of like, oh, this person might know more than me, which it can sometimes be for sure, but it's just that, like, if you refer one of your patients to somebody closer to them to do the physical therapy, it's like, fuck, is that person then going to never come back and see me again? And that sort of thought process.
And that's where it comes down to, like, being able to say that you don't know something when you don't, and don't just make something up. Because at the end of the day, for myself, if I'm saying I'm trying to, answer a question or give someone, you know, a specific direction or something that I'm not familiar with, and I'm trying to just make it up on the spot, I'm actually detrimenting that person. You'll find that people actually respect you more when you go, you know what, I think you need to see Dave, or I think you need to see a GP or a doctor because I'm not really sure about this, and I want to make sure that it's not a red flag or it's not something, you know, that I'm not actually in my scope to deal with. And I myself, I still refer people onto chiros, because if someone really needs or they really want like an adjustment of a very specific, let's just say like a rib or something like that, then I'll often be like, okay, look, this is not my specialty. I can adjust you, but if you're looking for purely that side of things, then I can refer you to this person who's a chiro who specializes in this certain area. And I have done that for people. It doesn't happen that often, but I mean, I'm still able to be like, I'm not the best person for this particular thing.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I think you fucking nailed that. And you basically repeated the sentiment that I put out last week. I did a podcast on, or 2 weeks ago, maybe 10 lessons in 7 years of PT. Yeah. And one of them was like knowing when to refer out and knowing that you're not going to know everything and accepting that, because as soon as you start to bullshit the client and as soon as you start to try and lie and be like, oh, I can fix everyone and I can fix everything, you're only putting them at detriment. And if, you know, I know you're in this industry for the right reasons, similar to myself, but there's a lot of clinicians or PTs or whatever that can be selfish in that regard. And they're like, oh no, I can fix everyone. And if they leave, they're never going to come back. And it's like, that's detrimental to the client. Like our goal is to help the person in front of us at the end of the day. And sometimes that means we're not the person to help them. I myself, I know I've had people move on and I've said to them, hey, I don't think I'm actually the best person to help you with this. Or like from a physical aspect, it's like, okay, I don't do any of the physical therapy stuff. I don't do any adjustment. I don't do any of that sort of stuff. Here's the people to go and see. And oftentimes, as I said, like I've got a good enough network that there'll be people where I'll be like, I'll refer them through to you. I'm like, oh, I think you're going to get on really well with this person. You're a North GC. Here's X person. It's like there's so many different ways in which you can go about it. And I think having that network of people can only benefit everyone at the end of the day, because I know, you know, we've worked in the same gym together. We've had a lot of like crossover within our work, and it's only ever benefited our clients at the end of the day, and benefits ourselves, because there's been times where I ask you questions and you help educate me. And there's been times you've asked me questions, I can help educate you on certain things. And it's like, without having that relationship, you're never going to know everything. But if you don't have that relationship, you're not going to learn anything either. Yeah. And within that, like I know you've done quite a lot of further education and everything like that around just training and everything.
A lot of money all the time. It's too much. But yeah.
Not just osteopathy.
Yeah.
So I want you to quickly touch on some of the things you have done, because we've already mentioned that people don't give a fuck about what we know. They just care about how we can help. Yeah. But I think something that a lot of young PTs and everything like that can get caught up in is like, they're scared to invest the money because they're like, oh, this person doesn't care if I know that. But like, you still need to know that, even like down to some fucking physiology and biology shit that nobody's going to care about. No. So give like a little bit of an insight into some of the things you've done, even all of them.
Oh, there's a lot of things I've done in terms of both rehab, sort of more exercise based. And then there's a lot within the realm of like treatment. So learning from, you know, people who are very good at hands-on techniques as well, whether that be through in-person seminars, workshops, or online as well. So I've done a blend of both, but I did decide quite early on that the hands-on side of things wasn't going to be my passion, in terms of like, I can do it and I can help people and I can get them to the rehab stage quite easily, but it's not going to be something that I ever want to specialize in. So I went heavily down into the assessment side of things, and then giving people like exercises to work on, which they can do in their own time or as a one-on-one session. Okay. So that can be based online as well, because I feel like, you know, like for instance, like David Gray Rehab, which we both know, he does a lot of online work and he's found a lot of success in that. But you have to be so confident and so good with basically talking to people, like coaching them to be like, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. I need you to feel this, or change your foot position. Like that coaching side of thing, communicating is very important. But then also being confident to troubleshoot things on the fly. Like if someone's experiencing pain during a squat with you, like a one-on-one session per se, obviously you're more like online now, but you had to quickly troubleshoot that. Yeah. Where's the pain? What makes it worse? Can we adjust the range of motion? Can we adjust the tempo? Can we adjust the load? Do we need to modify the exercise? So that is the things, is like what separates you from a beginner coach to a more experienced coach, is because you don't have time to chat GPT that, you know. Yeah, most people are into the AI now. So it's like, you need to know that because the client's right there in front of you. So a big part of my learning was being really good at coaching and then understanding human movement. Those are the two biggest things I found, and the most helpful in both online and in person as well, I think.
Yeah.
Mentors, we all know Prescript. They were early on, Jordan Shallow, because I really liked what he did. He blended the chiro with the PT, with the coaching sort of thing. And then I did Dave O'Sullivan's mentorship as well, which he is quite similar in getting people moving as early on as they can. No one wants to, just be stuck at the stage where they have to get a massage every week. And then, we've all been there. So, those are my main two influences. I've done a lot of other courses, but if I had to pick, probably one or two, I would say the Prescript sort of education side, and then Dave O'Sullivan, and then my good friend Dan Copebride. He was the first person that he was the first person I invested in, like money, because his mentorship was really, really good, but it's an investment. It's not $200. It's, an investment, which I think is good because you got buy-in then. You're like, okay, I've paid, $2,000, $3,000, whatever it was for this mentorship. I'm going to do it because I just spent, a lot of money. So you and I both, like, having a financial investment in something makes you want to do it more.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, Dan was the last guest had on last week. He was the last episode that dropped. Yeah. And similar thing, like as I said to him, like he was the first mentorship that I invested into. And there was, at that time, I was still sort of just coming up as a PT, and I'd done a couple of courses like precision nutrition stuff, $500-$600 investment, or $1,000 at most. You're kind of like, oh yeah, cool. But when you start talking to like thousands, you're like, fuck, is this? Yeah. You start to have that little bit of doubt in the back of your mind. It's like, is this going to help me as much as it?
Why did you pick Dan? Like, what was the thing that made you actually wanted to be like, this is someone I want to invest in?
Fuck, I honestly don't even remember. We'd had some conversations online, and I'd followed him for a while, and we just got on. Like the information that he was going to provide really sung to me. Like he was aiming that first one at helping clinicians better understand movement from a personal training perspective, and helping personal trainers have a little bit more of that understanding about the clinician-based side of things. So for me, it was like invaluable to learn some really, really basic rehabilitation stuff, and not even from the sense of like, I can now rehab injuries, but just to help me have a bit of a better understanding of like, if my client does come to see an osteo, it's like, well, I need to know about the posterior sling systems and things like that to actually understand like, oh, well, this is what he's trying to achieve, and this is how we can do this. It was the actionable steps that you could pretty much finish a lecture and go straight away and apply with my clients that afternoon that made it for me. And I'm sure that's the same with Prescript. Like I've done a bit of stuff with them. I've worked with their coaches before. And it's that actionable stuff that as a PT, as a clinician, everything is so incredibly invaluable, because it's easy to go and read. It's easy to chat GBT answers for things, right? But until you can practically apply it on a living human being. And it was really funny that you mentioned about, understanding anatomy, understanding biomechanics and all that sort of stuff. But it's more important to be able to talk to a person, which I do think gets lost. Sometimes people focus a little bit too much on the I'm very, very smart, I know all of this, but I can't talk to a fucking person, and then they fail. And you have the other end of the spectrum who people are great at talking to people. They kind of suck when it comes to anything to do with anatomy. It's like they're probably a great group fitness instructor or a great PT in the sense that they're a cheerleader, essentially. As soon as somebody needs something more specific, you go and find that. You go and find that next person for you. And I remember when I first started getting into powerlifting and everything like that, and you mentioned about a squat, like trying to break down a squat in session. When I had no fucking idea. It's like, oh, what's causing pain? I don't know. I don't even know where to start with this. Now I can sit there and break down a squat in 2 seconds, from everything from the foot up to the top down, like every single part of it, I could make an adjustment. And it's like, that has come from, education. It's also come from working with hundreds of people on the gym floor for hours upon probably thousands of hours, if not tens of thousands of hours by now. And that in itself, like doing the fucking thing, is more important than books. It comes down to that practical application. Like I'm sure with you, you were very fortunate in the fact that you were doing massage therapy before osteopathy. I remember talking to you and you saying that like this stuff has actually helped you with your course. Because you have that practical knowledge, you have the theory-based knowledge, but then you also have the practical knowledge. That's where the two worlds collide.
It is. And like, they don't teach you in uni how to talk to people. It's all anatomy and books and education and very like objective sort of like data to, test you on, essentially. Like you learn something, you test you on, learn something, you test you on. But the amount of students that I was, with over my journey, they didn't really know how to talk to someone. So we'd walk into a room and, you'd be next to them just supervising, and they would have no idea how to talk to a human. They would just ask them very robotic questions like, Where does it hurt? How long has it been like that? There's no rapport. There's no like talking to them about like what's the pain stopping them from doing, because people don't care about lower back pain. They care about lower back pain is stopping me squatting. They don't care about the pain itself. But if you focus too much on the pain and not the person in front of you, then you're sort of missing the forest through the trees, essentially.
Yeah.
And you're not going to build relationships with people that be like, oh, I like Dave. I want to go back and see him. Yeah, my pain's getting better, but I also just like just go, have a chat and find out what's going on in his life. Or, he asked me questions about my life. And this.
It's like talking to a brick wall. It's like you're not going to go back and talk to a brick wall just because it's going to be able to help you. And I think that's definitely a lost part of the puzzle for a lot of people. And similar thing when I was going through the back end of my degree at uni. And in the last year, because we were doing a fast-tracked master's for EP, a majority of my classes were all the master's subjects. So these were the last year students about to graduate and they were off into the world. Yeah. And I remember sitting there one day, and this, you can take this however you want, but I remember sitting there listening to them and I was like, we are fucked if these are the people that are quite literally 2 weeks away from graduating about to deal with real world people, because they couldn't even deal with people in a class setting. And it was any wonder why like the people who hadn't found post-graduation employment hadn't done so, because it's like, you can't talk to a person. You can't even talk to somebody in a class setting. You just read off a manual. It's like you can't do that in real life. Yeah. As you said, you can't whip out ChatGPT in the middle of a session. AI is great, but like it's not going to tell you how to talk to someone. And that rapport does matter. Like people want to know you give a fuck. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that is so critical in anything we do, from PT, online coaching, physical therapy, all of it. People want to know you give a fuck. If they don't feel you care, no matter what you're going to do, they don't really care. Yeah. You're going to really struggle as a fucking clinician, as anything, to actually be able to find that. And that was something, fortunately enough, that was ingrained in me from such an early age, is like, you're always a learner. You can learn off so many different things. And having people with like different demographics and backgrounds and socioeconomic statuses and things like that, it really does make you realize like how vastly different everyone is, but then at the same time, how very similar people are. People, when they're in pain, they act differently. Mm-hmm. They don't like it. If it does limit them from squatting, and that's, squatting is their therapy, and now all of a sudden they're fucking having a mental breakdown, or they can't play with their kids and that's affecting their job or anything like that. Like there's so many different avenues and pathways that this can affect. And you kind of briefly touched on it more towards the start, but there's a difference between being in pain and having like niggles. And you already said at the start that like there's pretty much nothing besides maybe an acute car crash where you need to actually actively take rest that's going to be made better by not doing anything. Yeah. And we've both dealt with this working within general pop and PTs in gyms and stuff like that. Like someone might get the most minor niggle, but to them it's a 12 out of 10 and they can't fucking do anything. And they're like, oh, I'm stopping everything. My life is over. Yeah. So do you want to quickly touch on and dive into a little bit deeper about like pain, like actual pain and niggles, and what that kind of represents from even like maybe a signaling structure from the body?
I think, the difference between, say, like pain and niggles, like as we do something like we peek into a powerlifting comp, or we're trying to be really good at, let's just say, a specific sport, and like we're trying to get, that next step, especially like elite sport, there's going to be niggles. Like if we're trying to push the envelope of human performance, there's going to be niggles. Like you can't just, be like, oh, I don't expect to ever have any pain or any injuries, but I want to, train 5 or 6 days a week and peak for a powerlifting competition. It's just not how it works. But I think your mindset around it is very important, where it comes, having a coach like yourself who's experienced a lot of aches and pains, or like going to a therapist who has those aches and pains too, or has had injuries, and they be like, okay, look, it's not the end of the world. Like you're going to get better. Because I think people catastrophize it. They go, I've got lower back pain, I'm going to have it forever. Then people go into that domino effect, and it takes people like a good coach or having someone like a friend who's experienced it to tell you like, hey, just hold up. Everything's going to be all right. We just need to decrease volume, maybe just change exercises, or maybe we need to add in some more mobility work or more rehab work. So I think that is a big thing that people don't talk about, is the mindset around the injury or around the pain. That is quite important. In terms of, I don't sort of want to go too rabbit hole through like the pain sort of stimulus side, but pain is very governed by how we are feeling and how inflamed we are. And, with things like sleep and diet and hydration come in, and, stress and that kind of stuff. So I think if you were to be, very fatigued, not recovering enough, your pain that was normally a 3 is now going to be a 7.
Yep.
Okay. But then you get that person sleeping correctly, eating enough food, eating the right food, less stress. That same pain is now a 2 or 3. But we didn't actually change the area. We didn't change the tendon, or we didn't change the joint. We just changed that person, how the person's essentially feeling, the fatigue level, recovery level. So I think that is an important thing when managing pain is knowing that it's not just simply physical or biomechanical or movement-based. It can be heavily influenced by how much fatigue you've built up over the week through training, or how well you're sleeping, or your stress levels, or even emotional. Like if you have an emotional trauma that happens, your family member dies, like that's going to have a toll on your entire body, which is going to affect everything else, which then means your pain is more. And we're more likely to get injured as well as experience pain, if that makes sort of sense. And you would have experienced that with your clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that covers it perfectly. And it's covering both from the mental aspect of things and also looking at the external variables as well. I know that that's something, one of the first things I'll ask any client who starts to deal with niggles or pain, or they have an injury occur, that I'm like, okay, cool. How is sleep? How's your stress been this week? Have you eaten enough? Have you drunk enough? What did you have the night before for dinner? Like all of these other things that have nothing to do with the injury itself, injury for lack of a better term, but it just allows us to paint a picture. And then all of a sudden this person starts to deal with less stress. They're feeling a lot better externally. They're getting outside and getting more sun. They've drunk more water. Nothing else has changed. And their symptoms are 1,000 times better. It's like our body holds on to things. And I say it time and time and time again that like everything we deal with goes into the same basket. No matter where the stress is coming from, whether it's physical, emotional, social, like all of these different avenues, they all go into the same basket at the end of the day.
For sure.
The way in which they then get sort of cycled through and pushed out into the body can be vastly different for everybody. But I've definitely seen a correlation between I'm struggling emotionally, mentally. Now physically I'm tired, sore, injured, more prone to injury, all of these sorts of things. Especially like you mentioned it through powerlifting preps. And like for the most part, people only ever think about the physical toll that puts on the body. But having competed quite a few times myself, I know that there's emotional toll. I know there's a social toll. I know that there's like a toll on every other aspect of our lives that you have to be willing to accept. And that's any sport at all. Whether if you want to be good at any sport, if you want to compete to a high standard, if you want to push yourself beyond what would be deemed a normal pursuit, there's going to be those things. And that's where I think the rise of, and I know you're very, very big on this, things like breath work and meditation and having all of these like little stress mitigation strategies at play come into it. Because even like for the Pilates and yoga girlies, you go to a yoga class, they tell you to stretch. If you're sitting there rigid, not breathing properly, you're breathing shallow or whatever, you're not stretching. One of some of the first things they say is like, okay, you're going to inhale and exhale, breathe, like allow the body to actually relax, tell itself it's not in stress, and it can facilitate pushing through. And it's no different to normal training. Do not breathe out in the bottom of a heavy ass squat. That's probably not going to end well for you. But if you like take an extra couple of minutes before you go into that session and just like center yourself and like relax a little bit and allow the body to just naturally do the thing it wants to do, probably going to find like a bit of a reprieve in terms of symptoms and stuff like that too. Yeah,
for sure. And like sometimes high stress is good, like leading into a max 1RM, your third lift of a squat. You better hope that you've built up some sort of, awakeness or alertness going into that squat, which is, people get angry before they do a heavy squat or whatever because they're building that anticipation, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And arousal levels is definitely something that I think more people should learn about, ways in which you can control your arousal levels. That was something that even when we went through it with uni, it was just crazy. Some of the like studies and things like that I've seen in relation to different music and different environments and all of that. And I know myself for years and years, I would always have a top set song or something along those lines, and the Veronica's Untouched or something like that. Like it was at first, when I first started powerlifting, my top set songs were like angry, screaming, loud, aggressive, and I was like, fuck yeah, this is great. Like, G yourself up. And then as I got on, I realized over time that didn't work well for me because then it actually put me into too much of a heightened state, but
you're really
not
heightened,
in a positive heightened state. It was like, now it's having a detrimental effect, and my body was like in fight or flight and being like, fuck, we're just going to get out of this as quick as we can and fuck up the lift, or I'd mess up something or my setup or something like that. And then it came down to, okay, well, I still need a higher level of arousal, but how am I going to get that in a positive way?
Yeah.
And it came from songs like Untouched by the Veronicas or something along those lines that almost like changed it to more of an upbeat, happy feeling.
Yeah.
It was still a heightened sense of arousal that allowed me to physically perform the task I needed to do.
Yeah.
But it was like a positive. I deadlifted 300 kilos for the first time to that song, squatted 290 to that song. Like it's a fucking, I love that song. Veronica's, if you're ever listening to this, please, I love you. Come and sing it for me or something. It's my birthday soon. Moving on from that. So like you obviously deal with everyone from top level athletes down to regular mums and dads who they don't give a fuck about performing at their absolute best. They just want to get through their day. They want to be able to work better or play with the kids, all that sort of stuff. For those people, how much of a differentiation is there in your approach? How much of a differentiation is there in your treatment? What are some of the factors that you actually take into consideration for that person? And I know we've touched on quite a few, but if we can like sort of bring them all together.
At the end of the day, when you're talking about, catering your treatment or your rehab to a specific person, again, it comes to communicating with that person on what their exact goals are. For the soccer mum who just wants to, be able to get in and out of the car, we don't need to go too far in the direction of like optimizing, everything through a rib cage and pelvis and foot pressure and all that kind of stuff. It's generally, they're people that tend to generally respond very well to treatment, and then maybe a few stretches and some mobility drills, and then they're fine. Because they're not putting their body through a lot of stress generally, speaking, unless they're, involved in a sport or training specifically. Those sort of people generally respond well or better to your very simple mobility stretches and treatment, for three or four treatments, and they feel pretty good and get on with their life. But as soon as you throw in, I want to powerlift, or I want to, do really well for something like a high rocks event, or if I want to, compete in a sport at a moderate to high level, that changes things a little bit, because they're going to keep putting their body under stress. So we need to basically look at their movement through more of a microscope and figure out, why does this keep reoccurring when they do running over 6Ks, for example, or when they deadlift, over 200, they get a back issue. Like, why? What is going on with their technique that we need to look at before I can then prescribe treatment and then rehab? So that's my sort of main differences. Again, depending on the human, if their goal is to just get in and out of the car and play with the kids, then I don't really need to go too into the weeds with everything. It could be something quite simple and very things that they can manage at home, because as you know, those people generally don't want to do a lot of stuff outside of their normal routine because of like time or commitments or responsibilities. They have less of a want to do it because it's not something that is making or breaking them essentially as a human, or it's not part of their identity that they identify as like a high rocks athlete or a gridiron player or whatever. So I find with those people, very simple rehab, few treatments, they're pretty good. You don't really need to go much further. More athletic population is going to be more looking at how they're doing the sport or how they're moving, and then catering the rehab towards that, managing load, managing volume, all that kind of stuff. I think it's probably the easiest way to.
Yeah. So again, it all just comes back to the person in front of you at that point in time and understanding them. And I think you can generalize without just putting blanket like, oh, you do X sport, you've got this wrong. Yeah. It's like that person might not have that wrong. And like, I know myself, I've had certain issues with certain movements and lifts and things like that. And it's like someone else having that same issue or injury, something entirely different to what I was dealing with, and vice versa, right? But that's, again, it just comes back and highlights the point we've made multiple times. And I was like, assess the person in front of you as a PT. Talk to the fucking person in front of you. Find out what they actually want to do. Like, does that mum need to be squatting with a barbell on her back? Yeah. Probably fucking not. You know what would probably be better for her? Some form of anteriorly loaded goblet squat, or put her on a machine, get her some base level strength that's going to allow her to, as you mentioned, get in and out of the car better, or just bend down to pick up the kids better, or like, they don't need to know about the iliac lat fibers or how to really like get 15 extra degrees out of this. They don't need that shit. They just need, they're going to feel better. as you said, sometimes the physical therapy helps them the most because now they felt like, oh, the treatments worked really well. Yeah. Now I can do these things. And it's like, sometimes has it been correlated to the treatment or has it been correlated to the change in mentality? Just very hard to say. It's probably a bit of both. But there's mentioned something in there twice, 2-3 times, and I want to dive into it because it's very fucking prevalent in today.
Oh, no, here we go.
High rocks, hybrid training, running.
Running.
There's, they've just had High Rocks Worlds. I don't know if you've seen. There's a lot of controversy coming out of High Rocks Worlds at the moment.
I've seen that. The
carpet wasn't smooth enough, and apparently one of the chicks who was the world champion was disqualified because her band that they gave her wasn't registering correctly.
What?
So she won, set a world record, and they were like, oh, it doesn't count because your ankle bracelet that we gave you didn't work properly.
And the US got disqualified?
Oh, did they? I didn't see that.
Yeah, Australia won, mixed relay.
Fucking oath, up the Aussies. I don't care if they got...
Probably one of the biggest names in the High Rocks sport at all. Entirely, Hunter, he pushed someone off the course as they were running. He bumped them into the banners in the background. And then US won, got awarded everything. And then after the event, got disqualified. And Australia won by default.
Fuck, it doesn't matter. Win's a win. That's all that fucking matters up the boys.
So there's a bit of stuff going on with that sport.
Shit, I've only seen the carpet thing was very interesting. Yeah. That's popped up quite a few times now. Yeah. And then I saw the thing this morning about I think she was an American girl, US girl. Devastated, as you can imagine. Like, no matter the sport, no matter what you think about, I think this is important to quickly preface, no matter what we think about the sport as a whole.
I'm doing one, so.
I want to do one.
Yeah.
People put in a lot of time, effort, money, energy, travel. Like, there's so much that goes into this, whether it's High Rocks, whether it's powerlifting, whether it's fucking AFL, whatever the case might be. Yeah. If somebody is investing time, energy, effort, money into that, then that is important to them. Yeah. And I don't think anyone else's thought process around what they think of it as a sport. Yeah. It's like, if you look at the definition of sport or athlete, it's very loose. It's very broad. Yeah. It's like competing in something. They are athletes at the end of the day. And these are some of probably the fittest people in the world. I know CrossFit for years copped a really fucking bad rap. And it's like, CrossFit at a base level, probably somewhat warranted with some of the shit they were doing. CrossFit at the top level, there's no one that can argue that they aren't the best athletes in the world in multimodality things. Fucking huge. Yeah. The chicks are bigger than half the dudes you see at your local worlds who claim to be bodybuilders. Yeah. So just touching on that, because there is such a rise of the hybrid athlete, the hybrid training, High Rocks, turf games, fucking all of this sort of shit. Give us a little bit of an insight and maybe even some actionable steps that people can take if they're just wanting to shift more towards that direction.
So there's two main parties that do High Rocks that I found. One of them, which is more so the case of myself, is I used to run when I was a lot younger. I haven't run for, prior to training for this High Rocks event, I hadn't run for years, like properly. So I was quite strong with lifting. I had decent cardio on the ergs, but then running is a different form of cardio, do you know what I mean? So, and it's a different impact on the body. So that's sort of one side of things. A person that's quite strong with lifting, moderate to cardio base, and then they've never really run, or they used to run when they're younger, and now they're back into running. Yeah. Which has its whole new set of issues. And then you have the other scope where it's like you got marathon runners who go, oh, there's AK's running is easy. I've got a sled push, sled pull, blah, 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 all that stuff. I reckon I can do it. So they have little to no strength, but their endurance, especially running endurance, is very good. Those two people are going to have different issues. For yourself and I, especially getting back into running, we're going to have things like shin splits, things like Achilles tendonitis, things like plantar fasciitis, all these little aches and pains. And we don't really know what's going to come, what specific injury it is, because it doesn't actually really matter if it's shin splints, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, knee pain, whatever. It just matters of what is actually going wrong with the running, you could say technique, or what's going wrong with hip stability, and what do we need to actually fix strength-wise throughout the body? Is it just more calf training to fix that problem? Again, it doesn't matter if it's shin splints or Achilles tendonitis. It just matters what is actually going on with the running and the lower limb that's causing there to be an overload of a certain tissue. And then with the people who are less strong but more running fit, they're going to have different set of issues. Like it could be like lower back pain from doing more sled pushing, which is loading the spine and the whole body in quad, there's a lot of load going through that part of the body, and they're not going to be strong enough to handle, heavy sled pushes or heavy sled pulls. They might be really good at the row erg or the ski erg because that's more cyclical. It's more like they've already got that hard cardio base.
Yep.
So they might not have as many issues. I think it's quite a bit harder to come from no running into high rocks, because high rocks is mainly a running event with side quests.
Yeah, it's still 8Ks.
Correct.
At the end of the day, people are like, "Oh, it's only a K." It's like, yeah, but it's 8Ks over the course of an hour.
Yeah, and you prepared yourself to get back into footy. Before you did it, you were like, okay, I sort of know what I need to do here to prepare my lower body for getting back into footy. Things happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was fucking shin splints after the first run.
Yeah,
and they haven't gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're hard to get rid of because they're one of those injuries that don't make people like me look very good, because they're one of those things that like takes a long time to get over and fully over. But I mean, your experience with it has probably been trying to, keep heat on it, keep it moving, manage your running volume and your running load around where you sort of know, like, if I do more than 5Ks or 10, whatever Ks it is, I know that it will start to get worse. So let's just give ourselves a bit of a buffer, keep our strength training very focused on the issue, and then keep improving from there, keep progressing from there.
Yeah. And I guess even for me, in relation to that aspect of things, vastly different, because I've gone back to a field sport, back to AFL. So for me, I feel there's so much less predictability within that, because one Tuesday we might be doing short, sharp, skills-based session that's only very moderate running. And then the next Tuesday it's like, oh, we're going to be doing higher endurance running, or it's like now the Thursday night there's heaps of tackling, which comes with it. Force production from having to tackle and be hit and tackle others and exert force in a different direction and all of this sort of shit. And then the next week, it's none of that. It's like there's so much differentiation in between the two. Yeah. No two games are the same. So trying to sit there and be like, I'm going to do this amount of sled pulls and this amount of pushes and shit like that. Like there's predictability within a high rocks. There's predictability within those type of things. There's not predictability within field sports. Yeah. So I think that's something also people need to consider if they are shifting back their thought process to like, oh, I played soccer growing up, I'm going to go back and play high level soccer again. It's like, I didn't play AFL for 12 years and I put on 55 kilos.
It's hard to go back, and giving people, I guess, some actionable things to actually, consider when they're going to be training for high rocks or doing high rocks event is going to be a big thing is footwear. Like your footwear is a massive, massive part of it. So getting not just the fancy, most expensive shoe, but actually a shoe that, fits your foot arch or your specific sort of needs through your foot. Because me and you could have totally different foot arches, and you can have wider feet, I could have
I got fat ass feet.
Yeah, you know what I mean? We're going to have different shoes. It doesn't make sense that we'd have the same shoes. So getting yourself a really good pair of like running shoes or footwear for high rocks specifically is going to be probably one of the best investments you make if you can get it right from the start. That's going to save you a lot of issues in the future. Managing your running volume, like that's going to be massive as well. Not being like, I haven't run before, I'm going to run 10Ks. Because then that's where you run into like issues like shin splints or like Achilles tendonitis, when you go from doing nothing to then a lot too soon. You don't build up and you don't actually train around it, prepare your body for that. You're not going to have enough time for recovery, essentially, yeah. And then having, more, I guess you say, like a thoughtful approach to how you're going to do things and how you're going to structure things leading into, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, however you've got long before the event, and not just trying to do everything at once. Because that is a surefire way to absolutely blow something out if you try and do everything at once. And if you don't have that experience yourself, that's when it's like finding someone who does to then guide you through that process. If you can't trust yourself to program accordingly, then
I don't trust myself either. So
those are some sort of very simple things that anyone getting back into running or high rocks itself, like those are the two biggest things I found, along with like hip stability, like controlling the ability of the hip, under load or under change of direction for footy is going to be super important. You know that as well. Like managing everything from the foot up to the hip in running is jumping from one leg to the other. You better have good hip stability. Otherwise, if you don't, then you could have issues downstream or upstream.
Yeah, 100%. And with that, like recommendations in relation to the shoe stuff, Athlete's Foot or any good running store have those walk-on foot assessment things. Yeah. Go and get one of those. They're free 9 times out of 10.
Try them on.
100%.
Don't just Google what's the best shoe for high rocks, because I guarantee you
it's not going to come back for you. Yeah. Like it's I know for a fact when I was getting back into running, I was like, what is the best shoe for a wide foot? It's like, yeah, it gave me a couple of options.
Yeah.
But until I physically went into the store, did the walk assessment thing, fucking tried them on, was like, okay, perfect. These are the ones for me. It's like, great. That made a huge difference straight away because I was running shitty Nikes before that.
Yeah, don't do barefoot shoes.
Do not try and run in barefoot shoes. I did barefoot shoes years ago. And day to day, great.
Yeah.
My feet were the best they've ever felt. But don't just go run fucking barefoot. Yeah. And then exactly that, like, you can't go from zero to hero. You can't just go from couch to fucking running a marathon in 2 weeks. Like, this sort of stuff takes time. And whether it's an ego thing, whether it's just, well, they do it so I can do it. It's like, that's a great mentality to have. But understand that, like, this shit does take time. And it's maybe a little bit different to bodybuilding, powerlifting in the sense that, like, aerobically, you can pick up your base very fucking quickly. And you talked before about, like, with ergs and things like that. So for people who don't know what ergs are, it's like your ski erg, your rower, your bike, like assault bike, that sort of stuff. Like, those sort of things, you can build aerobic capacity fairly quickly on those, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to transfer straight over to being able to run or even play footy. And you referenced Jordan Shello before, and he put up a really good post not that long ago that was discussing exactly that. It's like, you could be the fittest person in the world on a bike, but as soon as you try and get, and he was more talking about NFL, it's like, or NHL as well. It's like, as soon as you try and get on the field or on the pitch, on the ice, shit changes. The mechanics, your ability to load through the lower limb, your ability to actually have your foot do what it needs to do so the knee can do what it needs to do so the fucking hip can do what it needs to do. And then vice versa, like top of chain up, down, and bottom of chain up. Like, all of these little things that you may not think about and people may not think about in general that are definitely important. And this almost ties in really perfectly with what we were saying about it at the start. It's like, people don't give a fuck about what we know. They just care about how we help. But it's what we know that can help. And that's where, as you mentioned, like, investing in a coach. Don't just go by somebody's, I know there's a lot of generic cookie cutter, be the next High Rocks world champion programs that got thrown out after the first couple of High Rocks. And it's like, you've got Jenny, 40-year-old mother of two, who's like, oh, this 17-year-old, 18-year-old has just gone down High Rocks. I'm going to go buy that program. It's like, probably not going to help you to the degree that you want it to. And then you're going to run into all these other issues. And the worst part is you're going to then end up blaming High Rocks because, or whatever event you might do, or whatever sport it might be. It's like, you haven't properly prepared, and then you've just gone and thrown everything into it. You've tried to run, you've done the sled push pulls, you're doing carries, you're doing all of this shit just straight off the bat with no practice. And it's about finding, no different to when you have an injury, finding an entry point that works for you.
Yeah, for sure. And High Rocks is very specific. Like, we already know what the event's going to be. You know what weight you're going to sled push. You know how much you're going to do on the roller. Like, you know how much you know exactly how much you're going to run. So it's quite easy to prepare for a High Rocks event. Like, it's not very hard. It's just about managing different variables. Where am I shit at? Where am I good at? I need to improve the stuff I'm shit at and maintain the stuff I'm good at. You know what I mean? So it's quite simple in the aspect. And powerlifting is the same. You already know what squat, what deadlift, and what bench you're going to do. Because you've been training for that.
We hope so.
Yeah, we hope so. In certain people,
sometimes it doesn't always go to plan.
But I mean, we have a good idea. We know.
Well, you're going to squat, bench, and deadlift.
Yeah, and you're going to do it in that order.
You
know what I mean? And you sort of know how much weight
you're going to be 3 attempts at them.
So it's very. I think powerlifting. I think High Rocks are quite easy to train for with caveats, but I think if we look at like sports, like rugby, like footy, like those are a bit harder in terms of like pre-season, in-season training. There's going to be a lot more difference, a lot more variables to think about. And there's always the unpredictability, and there's the massive mental aspect of it as well, which is prevalent in all sports. But I would say like there's more unknowns in footy.
Especially as soon as you factor in all of those things, different running, jumping, landing, change of direction, but then you add collision on top. Rugby, there's a lot more collision than AFL, obviously.
And decision making.
We try and avoid getting tackled if we can. Rugby, they kind of just bang straight into the person. They're happy to be there. So those are different aspects too that, like, again, you can do all of this sort of shit. You can perfect it. You can have it fucking dialed. But as soon as you get hit for the first time, you're not really going to know what happened. And I remember when I first went back, like for me, as you'd already said, like I had started to change my training in a dynamic. I knew I was never going to get back and be as I was when I was young. But again, 55 kilos plus a whole fucking range of a different lifestyle since then, it's going to be a fair bit of difference.
Yeah.
For me, it was a matter of like, get my body as good as it can be to be able to just facilitate the basics levels of this sort of shit, and things are going to improve. My skills improved by doing them in sessions. My fucking running improved by just turning up to training every week and everything like that. Decision making is going to improve by doing the fucking thing. All of this stuff just improves by doing the thing. You can only get your body so right. And I remember the second week when we got to our home ground and they were like, yeah, we're doing tackling practice this week. And that for me was the biggest worry, because I'd gone from powerlifting for so long where like we're a very stationary sport. It's one plane of motion, up, down, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Stable as fuck. You don't want to move anywhere. To now having to process getting tackled again.
Yeah.
And like I was a fuckload bigger than the majority of the guys on the team.
Yeah.
And I was still worried about getting tackled and tackling, because it's like so much shit can change in that split instance. So that's definitely something to consider for people who are trying to go back to maybe a team sport more so than anything else. Obviously, Dave already covered like the high rock stuff and what to sort of more or less prepare for and how to go about that sort of thing. But honestly, I think that pretty well, like, I think that covers everything quite broadly. We've been able to bring it back from our very first points we made right all the way through to the end points. And there's a lot of actionable steps for people in there to actually take. To wrap us up, is there closing notes from yourself? Where can people find you? And then I do have 3 questions for you that everybody has to answer. So
yeah, easiest place to find me would be through Instagram. So at Dr. Dave Sinclair. You can message me on there. I'm pretty responsive through Instagram DMs, as most of my business is done through socials, just like yours. I do have an in-person and online, so in-person business on the Gold Coast, which is then also forms part of my online business, which is Strongside Rehab. I think it's at Strongside_rehab. You can also message me on there, and you can obviously book in-person and online appointments through that portal as well. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll throw his at in the show notes and everything like that as well. I'm going to put it up on socials or tag him. You can add him as collab, and he will be able to answer any of your questions. Jump on, follow his content. His content has leveled up lately. Mans is on the content train. And I think the biggest thing that I could recommend to anybody is find like good, knowledgeable people who have done the fucking thing and can actually help you when you need it, and can also sit there and be like, okay, maybe you need somebody a little bit more when they need it, because that is something crucial as well. But to wrap us up, we've got 3 questions and I make everybody answer them. So first things first, if you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
I think the biggest thing I would tell myself is to not be so worried about what other people think about you or what you're doing. I think especially earlier on in my life, I was very governed about being liked and making other people happy. And like, I would almost do it as a sacrifice to my own wants and needs, So I think I was very scared about, being the person that was doing something different, or being, a bit more, not outspoken, but a bit more confident in myself, because I didn't want to stir the nest sort of thing. I think that was probably the biggest thing that I've learned getting into like my 30s now, which is horrible. biggest thing I've sort of tried to, and I keep working on is making sure that I'm doing things that I want to do, and it's coming from the right place. And I'm not, doing it to be nasty or hurt anyone else. And if I can live with myself, I can't control what other people think about me. It's not within my control. So I'm less so worried now about trying to influence how people see me or perceive me or what they think about me, and more so doing about things that I want to do and what I think are right for myself.
Fuck yeah. Dude, that's fucking awesome. I love that. Favorite animal?
Right here, dog.
You can see his nose. He's been very quiet, actually. He's been good.
Definitely a dog person. That was part of my job in the army, was being a dog handler for about 2.5 years. So
see? Handsome boy.
Really love dogs. That's not going to ever change, I don't think.
I love that. How can you not? Look at him. Look at this. He's so beautiful. And to finish us off, what does strength mean to you?
I could take that question a lot in different ways, physically and mentally. Mentally, I would say being confident, again, going back to confidence in yourself and the things that you've learned, the things that you've done, and the person that you're continually trying to self-improve. I think that is a big strength. As me and yourself and I, we're in a circle where people are trying to improve themselves, but that's not common throughout most of the population. So I think being strong in yourself as to recognize, what do I need to improve and what can I be better at? And then continually trying to make steps to do that, to be a better person, whether that's, as I said, like mentally, spiritually, or physically is a bit of a different realm. But I think if I had to summarize it, I would say strength-wise is more, when the way I look at whether I read that question or listen to that question is like being confident in yourself, being confident that you're trying to improve yourself and be better, and helping others as well. I think it's important. Yeah.
I fucking love it. That's
Yeah.
It's funny. Every time I've asked somebody that question, they're like, "Oh, I could think about this." And like, there's so many different realms, and that was why it was one of my favorite questions, because obviously my business name is Your Everyday Strength, and that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It can be a very subjective term. Now, we know for a fact that, you know, there's absolute and relative strength and all this other sort of shit from a physical realm. But like when we do start to look at things physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, socially, like all of these different aspects of our lives, it's like strength has a tendency to have a different meaning.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that summary right there is fucking beautiful. I love that. Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
As I said, anybody who wants to see more of Dave, jump on the socials, go and suss him out. There'll be a post. I'll put him up in the show notes, everything like that. But thank you once again for chiming in. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you again soon.